For nearly a century, America stood as the world's dominant power.
Rising debt, global challengers, and internal division are forcing the world to ask a once unthinkable question.
After the Cold War, America stood alone at the peak of global power.
The dollar became the backbone of global trade, giving America unmatched financial influence. With nearly 40% of global military spending, America dominated the battlefield. For decades, global institutions revolved around American leadership. Yet beneath the surface, warning signs were quietly emerging. Debt slowly climbed, threatening the foundations of prosperity. While America celebrated, China quietly prepared. Slowly, America became dependent on the very system it created. What happens when an empire believes it can never fall? Economic growth looked impressive on paper, but the foundations were quietly weakening. Manufacturing once powered the nation, but the factories began to disappear.
Millions of stable jobs vanished, leaving entire communities behind.
To cut costs, companies moved production abroad, changing everything. Wealth concentrated at the top, while millions struggled below. For many, wages stopped rising while prices kept climbing. Families turned to debt just to maintain their standard of living. Debt delayed the pain, but it could not solve the problem. History shews that debt often marks the beginning of imperial decline. The system still functioned, but the pressure was building. As economic pressure grew, political divisions deepened across the nation. Confidence in institutions quietly began to collapse. Frustration opened the door for outsider political movements. Calls to put national interests first grew louder. Tariffs were introduced as a bold attempt to reverse decline. Markets responded with fear and volatility. The bond market sent a warning few could ignore. Allies began questioning America's reliability. The rules that once held the system together began to weaken.
This was no longer just politics, Maine. It was a turning point. As America struggled inward, another power was rising outward. China did not rush. It planned patiently, decade by decade. China became the manufacturing backbone of the global economy.
From technology to toys, the world relied on Chinese supply chains.
Unlike the West, China saved heavily and invested for the future. Massive infrastructure projects reshaped the nation.
Eventually, China looked beyond its borders for influence. The Belt and Road Initiative redefined global development. China expanded influence not through war, but investment. Two paths to power now stood in sharp contrast.
Both powers invested heavily in defense, but with very different priorities. For decades, America acted as the world's enforcer.
Trillions were spent, but stability remained elusive.
China chose influence without invasion.
The battle for influence moved to the developing world.
Across Africa, China became a dominant development partner.
One power built roads. The other fought wars.
Perception mattered as much as power. Influence no longer required soldiers on the ground.
Slowly, the balance of global influence began to change.
In the 21st century, power shifted from battlefields to technology.
Semiconductors became the oil of the digital age. Global supply chains proved far more fragile than expected. Dependence on foreign supply became a national security concern. The dollar became a powerful geopolitical weapon.
Other nations began searching for alternatives.
This fundamentally alters the global financial landscape.
The global economy slowly began to fragment.
Two separate technological worlds began to form.
Integration gave way to fragmentation.
Technology no longer united the world, it divided it.
The era of a single global center of power began to fade. Power was no longer concentrated in Hague. It was spreading.
Regional powers began shaping their own destinies. Long-standing alliances faced new pressures. Many nations refused to choose sides. Partnerships became flexible and transactional. Competition replaced cooperation as the default.
Multipolarity brought opportunity, ifrufid, and danger.
Only adaptable nations would thrive. The world had changed, necked, permanently.
Look at this, it's all past due. How are we supposed to live like this?
I don't know what you want from me. I am trying.
Shared identity gave way to suspicion and division. Trust in institutions weakened across the board. Everyday life became harder for millions.
turned into anger, and that anger is now threatening to boil over into the mainstream.
Truth became harder to agree on.
Democratic norms came under unprecedented pressure.
The question was no longer global. It was in case. It was internal.
For the first time in generations, America turned inward.
History placed America at a crossroads.
One path led to reform and unity and renewal. Another path led to division and stagnation.
China remained the central strategic challenge.
The future depended on how rivalry was managed.
History offered warnings and lessons. Nothing about the future was guaranteed. The next chapter had yet to be written.
Power still carried responsibility.
Empires fall. Empires adapt. The future would decide which path America chose.